Talk about turmeric. Yes. So the other day, my wife and I were in India and Nepal, and we were walking through the turmeric fields. Now this comes from a root. Now I'm going to take just a little bit of time here, and I'm going to explain to you some of the differences that exist between turmeric essential oil and the botanical of turmeric, because there's a lot of confusion that's there. Now let me first tell you that turmeric, again, is not something new. Several years ago, we talked about turmeric. We didn't feel like the timing was right, and we also didn't have sourcing that was developed that we were confident in. In the very beginning of DoTerra, we had some limitation in what we could do because of our commitment to CPTG. It's nice to be in a time where we can have enough foresight that we can plan to the future, that we can look ahead, whether it's something like Roman chamomile or Melissa or rose or any number of other essential oils that we talk about routinely, that we can do a 3 or 4 or 5 year project and bring those to fruition in the context that you and I expect in doTERRA. And turmeric fits into that perfectly. It's the same exact thing for us. Now, one of the interesting things about turmeric is if we look at the constitution of it, it really is broken down into 3 components that I want to talk about. One, now I'm talking about the botanical itself. The bulk of the botanical is made up of water and proteins and carbohydrates, fats and minerals and fiber. This is the main reason, aside from the water, that you'll hear a lot of people say it's fat soluble. It's fat soluble, so if you take turmeric, if you're using a turmeric powder, or if you do the supplement, just take it with some other fatty type of a substance. So a fatty oil, for example, will help it to digest appropriately. Nothing could be further from the truth, because the chemistry that we're after within the botanical fits into these 2 other categories. One is curcuminoids. Now, if you know anything about nutrition, if you keep up on any of those things, you know that curcuminoids have created a lot of excitement lately, and it's because of the broad spectrum of activity that they represent. And then the other is tumerones. So let's talk about both of those just real quickly, curcuminoids and tumerones, because when we look at the other constitution of what we see within the root as a whole, within that botanical substance, water and proteins, carbohydrates, minerals, fats, we get those from a lot of other things. And so our interest has been narrowed. So the curcuminoids themselves, this is what you see when you take an encapsulation. This is what you see when you're taking a supplement of turmeric. Here's the problem. First off, these are large water-soluble molecules. And because of that, you get very poor absorption, and you get reduced biological activity. Now, there's a reason why we say that. The poor absorption also means rapid metabolism, and it also means rapid elimination. So we just don't get the usability out of the product that we're looking for. We don't get the full value. Now, a lot of people say, well, maybe if we combine this with other substances like piperine from black pepper, that would help to change the constitution to make it more soluble. That would, but that also comes with its own challenges associated with that. One of the things that I like about doTERRA, this is not new to us. You just don't know that it's not new. Do you know that you've been getting curcuminoids for almost as long as you can remember in doTERRA? We have curcuminoids in both the alpha CRS, and we have a substantial amount of curcuminoids in the deep blue polyphenol context. And not only that, we've gone through a proprietary process where we've combined them with essential oils, so we get absorption 7 times increased. So you get the full value. So just use what we're already using for you to take full advantage of the curcuminoids that now everybody is talking about. And so then that leaves us with the tumerones, right? And so let's talk about the tumerones real quickly. Now, tumerones actually come from the essential oil. And the amount of tumerones that we have within the botanical itself is somewhat small. And so one of the things that happens is most often people will do a CO2 extract. Now you can do a CO2 extract, or you can do a standard distillation and have an essential oil. Now in my research and my excitement for this, as I really started looking some time ago at what was in the marketplace, this was an actual label that I found. USDA certified, Turmeric CO2 essential oil. Now it's splitting hairs, but things like this bother me. A CO2 extract is not an essential oil. And let me tell you why it's not. Now CO2 extracts, I'm not saying they're not valuable, but let me give you some insight as to why we didn't do it in this case. CO2 extracts, there's supercritical extracts, which is high temperature and high pressure. There's subcritical CO2, which is low temperature and low pressure. And then there's even mid-range CO2, which is somewhere in the middle between them. The advantage of CO2 as an extract, if there is one, is that typically the CO2 itself, which is what extracts the essential oil components, is perceived to be really valuable because we don't have any solvents left over that we sometimes see with other processes. But here's the problem. CO2 is selective. And not only do we get other things besides the essential oils, we don't get all of the volatile chemistry from the essential oil. So we have a partial chemistry profile. And so for us, that just really wasn't an option. And the primary reason why is because when the chemistry is inconsistent, the ratio of the chemistry. Do you remember 3 years ago, we introduced to you arc plotting? Do you remember that? Where we talked about how chemistry has to be in balance, and it's one of our telltales for quality of essential oils. We don't talk about that anymore. We just shared with you that that's something we do. We continue to do that. We continue to build that library. We continue to use that resource because we're interested in the ratios of the chemistry as a marker, not just of quality, but also as a marker of bioactivity within the body. These are important things that get constituted within the essential oils that are lost and forgotten about by most individuals, but we pay close attention to. Inconsistent chemistry in its ratios, there's inconsistency in the benefit. And we had no desire for that, so we did something very simple. We chose to distill this as an essential oil. And here's the comparison. In the CO2 extract, why another reason everyone likes to do is I get all these curcuminoids. But remember, it's water soluble. I can't digest it without some assistance. And then I get very little of the tumerones. And because I don't get a very high yield, a lot of times other things are added into it, and I still get solvents and other unwanted things. Now, this is specific to turmeric. With the essential oil, how we're producing it, we get nothing but all of the volatile aromatic compounds. And the compounds that we're looking for is tumerones. There's alpha tumerone, there's beta tumerone, there's something called AR tumerone, and that deals with the aromatic preference of the tumerone. It's called aromatic tumerone, so therefore AR tumerone. We have high amounts of each of those and substantial amounts of AR tumerone. And why that's an advantage to us is that it makes the turmeric essential oil bioavailable. It can easily cross through and cross over the membranes and the different planes that it must do to be active within the body. Now, here's some of the key benefits that we see associated with that. Natural tissue support, increased antioxidant activity, sustains cardiovascular health, preserves neurological tissue, preserves brain function. It supports even all of those areas and in all of those capacities. Now, we did a study at DoTerra, and we did a neurological study. Now, we're in the very beginnings of this study. We're going to do much more work, but I want to show you what we have found in our initial results. We wanted to know, would turmeric essential oil create for us the advantage of protecting some of those most delicate cells that we see within the central nervous system, dendritic cells located within the brain specifically? And what we found, this picture will make no sense to you, but it's a colorful picture, right? It's a colorful picture, and what it's really demonstrating is increased activity within those dendritic cells. And we saw that in two frameworks. One is that healthy neurons, otherwise healthy neurons that became stressed or were damaged, showed improvement, significant improvement, recovery, and activity in the presence of turmeric and turmeric essential oil. The other thing that we did was we looked at healthy cells, and they became not only increased in their activity, but they also became more resilient and less susceptible to damage. And so in my estimation, turmeric is a wonderful essential oil for you to begin to learn and to use. Now, I've got some application methods here for you. You can use it topically. I have to tell you, turmeric, to me, is not my favorite aroma. However, take advantage and combine it with some of the oils that we've talked about. For example, mandarin and turmeric together, and especially because they're parallel pathway through the 5 LOX pathway, is a beautiful aroma, and it gives you enhanced benefits. So look for some ways that you can couple that essential oils. One of my favorite ways to begin using that, of course, is internally. Not all of us need to take oils internally. That's not something that every one of us needs to do. For me, I do it within moderation for what works best for me. And I do it in the context of it's the most convenient and effective for me. And so choose whichever method is best for you, whether you want to diffuse or use topically or use it internally. You're not limiting the benefits. We might be changing some of the course or some of the length associated with that. We might have to change and adjust dosage associated with that and our usage specifically. But there's no reason why you can't have benefits no matter how you choose to use the essential oils. Now, I bring this up because we've talked a lot about copaiba. We talked a lot about it last year. Emily spent some time and she talked with you about beta-caryophyllene today, and she reflected some of what you learned last year at convention right here. One of the things I want you to know is that it's not just beta-caryophyllene. It has targets outside of the endocannabinoid system as well. And here's just a few of them. The cardiovascular system, supporting healthy liver and brain tissue and activity and function. Lots of reasons. Remember, we get really excited about beta-caryophyllene, and we get excited about copaiba or yarrow or any number of essential oils that has it. But remember, there's other chemistry that's present as well. And collectively, we have a much broader spectrum of activity that's just limited to the few things that we highlight. So when you have an oil that you appreciate, when you have an oil that you love, use that oil. I can tell you in making your choices, you won't be wrong in choosing what feels right and what feels best to you. And